The GOAT is freaking back, baby. Pat White. It is official. Pat White is returning to West Virginia to be an assistant coach on the West Virginia Mountaineers coaching staff. And I'm here to give you my thoughts on it in this live edition of Couz's Corner. Thank you for tuning in. This episode is brought to you by Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law and our friends over at BetUS Online. It was announced officially today that Pat White will return to Morgantown to be the assistant to the head coach and the assistant quarterbacks coach for Coach Rich Rodriguez and this Mountaineer staff. A big announcement today. I also want to, before I forget, I do want to give a shout out to Mountaineer Paul over at Locked On West Virginia. He actually was the very first person that I know of to report on this. He talked about it weeks ago. So I do have to give him kudos for being first to the table, so to speak, with this story. So shout out to him. Thank you all for joining the show. Look forward to an exciting show. We're talking about the GOAT's return to Morgantown. Now, I say the GOAT somewhat loosely because there isn't a fair argument to make that Major Harris could also be the GOAT of West Virginia Mountaineer quarterbacks. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about Pat White returning to West Virginia. He's at least one of the GOATs to play quarterback in the old gold and blue. Number 5, the quarterback who really put West Virginia football back on the national map after Major Harris and those guys did it back in the late 1980s. So let's talk about that in this episode. Before we do, though, I do have to give a quick shout out to one of my sponsors. So hang on. We'll be right back. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident, are fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. All right, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being patient. Letting me give a shout out to Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, one of the great sponsors here on the show. Sorry, I had to adjust my screen there as well. But what exciting news this is that Pat White is returning to be an assistant coach on the West Virginia staff. Let's go ahead and pull up a recent Twitter post by West Virginia football, a picture of the GOAT. Right there he is, standing with the Cold Rush black on to go with the black glasses, styling and profiling my man, Pat White, and look at the golden blue sneakers. Gotta love it, man. It is so good to have Pat White home. Yes, he's from Alabama, but I'll always say he's home when he's in Morgantown and back with the old gold and blue. He's going to be roaming the sidelines. Boy, what a sight it's going to be to see that this year. I'm just super excited about it. I know most Mountaineer fans are. What an exciting time here in Mountaineer Nation. Here's the official announcement. Let me see. Let me find it here. We are live here, so forgive me. We are on live TV here. Yep. There's a picture of it there online. I'm not showing it to you, but I'm looking at it. It says he's assistant quarterback coach / assistant to the head coach. Now, there's been a little bit of controversy surrounding the hiring of Rhett Rodriguez as quarterbacks coach. I did a show on that a few weeks ago or a few days ago. And on the surface, it looks like, well, assistant quarterback coach, that means Rhett Rodriguez will be his boss. Seen talk about that online. I don't think that's the case here, folks. First off, titles are titles. At the end of the day, in a lot of organizations, they don't mean a whole lot. It doesn't necessarily mean the guy with the title is going to be the guy, quote unquote, leading the show, right? I also believe this will be a team effort. You'll have Pat collaborating with Rhett, who will be collaborating with lead offensive assistant Travis Trickett, who will also be collaborating with Coach Rodriguez, right? Who's coached quarterbacks most of his career as well. So you have a lot of knowledge in that room. Now, a lot of people are going to say, but Rhett, who's the actual quarterback coach, has the least amount of knowledge. It doesn't matter. Rhett Rodriguez has played the position. He's coached the position. He's grown up around the position for his dad, and he's going to be in the same room as the GOAT, Pat White. They're going to tag team leading these quarterbacks, and I think it's a great thing. I'm sure Travis Trickett will have input. I'm sure Coach Rod will have input. They're not going to do anything that's going to be detrimental to the program, folks. You don't think Rich Rod wants to win games in Morgantown? I guarantee you he does. The guy hates to lose. I guarantee all these guys, all these staff members hate to lose. They're going to want to do what's best for the program. It's better for everybody in the end. All the assistants it will improve their careers. You think Coach Rod wants to put his son in a situation that's going to be detrimental to him and his growth as a coach? No, he's not going to do that. So you bring in somebody like Pat White, who's not only played the position, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in college football, in my opinion, the first quarterback to win 4 straight bowl games, including 2 BCS games, with victories over Georgia in the Sugar Bowl and Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. Bring in him to help lead the room and be a sounding board in that room, somebody the players can come to. Not only that, you look at the pedigree Pat White brings, not only as a player, but as a coach. He has quite a bit of coaching experience in his own right. When you pull up his Wikipedia page here, just real quick, here are his stops. He was quarterbacks coach at Alcorn State from 2018 to 2019. He was running backs coach at South Florida for a year in 2020, which was a COVID year. He went from there to Alabama State, where he also coached quarterbacks in 2021. Then he went to the NFL in 2022 and 2023. He was an offensive assistant for the Los Angeles Chargers in the NFL. So he has coached players at the college level and the NFL level. He also spent a short amount of time at Campbell College or Campbell University coaching as well. So he has a lot of stops along the way where he's been able to take a little bit of experience from each stop, including his NFL stops. So he will know what it takes to make it to the next level. And oh, by the way, he did spend some time in the NFL himself before getting that serious concussion when he was playing for the Washington, at the time, Redskins at the pro level. He was a second-round draft pick. I mean, the guy's done it all. And he's even played professional baseball for a little while. So Pat White is just a phenomenal former athlete. I have a feeling he's going to be a phenomenal coach. And now I've seen some fans on social media say, well, there's too many nostalgia hires. Look, man, again, nobody wants to lose at West Virginia. If Ren Baker is on board with these moves, if the leadership at West Virginia is on board with these moves, Coach Rod, I trust him. And as far as Rhett being a quarterback coach, back to that again, one comment I forgot to make. If Pat White had an issue coming in to work with Rhett Rodriguez, or quote unquote for Rhett Rodriguez, he wouldn't take the job if it was going to be a problem. Okay. Why would he take the job? And why would all these other assistant coaches take jobs on the staff knowing Rich Rod's son's there? If they thought it was going to be a problem. So again, I don't see it being a problem. I just want to get that off my chest. I don't want that to negate the excitement that's surrounding having the GOAT Pat White back at West Virginia. I think this is absolute massive positive news, folks. Who better for somebody like Nico to learn from than Pat White himself, the guy who did it at the highest level at that school? You don't think Jalen Henderson, the new transfer from Texas A&M, what a great quarterback to be a sounding board. You've got Pat White there, a guy who did it, who's ran that offense, the same offense you're going to be running. If you're Max Brown, you don't want to go be in the ear of Pat White and get some tips from the GOAT at West Virginia. Come on. I think this is a great move, man. I think it's a great move. They can all still go back and watch Pat White highlights, even though these players, a lot of them probably weren't even alive when Pat White was quarterback at West Virginia. They can still go watch the highlights. They know how great he was. They can see it with their own eyes. So I think this is an absolute awesome move. What's up, Locked On, West Virginia? Great move, man. I'm so excited about this. I want to make sure we sweep the negativity under the rug a little bit. I'm not saying we don't respect people's opinions, but let's not let that ruin this fantastic news that Pat White's coming back. He actually got, Stanley, you're correct. He got drafted by the Dolphins. Originally, he played there for a couple seasons. Then he ended up going to the Redskins. Played there for, I don't even think he was there a full season. He got a very, very serious concussion that knocked him cold, basically. And after that, he was never, or wait a minute, he got that while he was at the Dolphins. I'm sorry, he got that while he was at the Dolphins. Then he went to the Redskins, and then he just never was able to get back to his old self, and just didn't work out with the Redskins. So he ended up not staying there very long, but he was on the Redskins for a short amount of time. But you're correct. He got the injury when he was with the Dolphins, I believe. Nonetheless, he played in the NFL. Joey Porter knocked him out. You're correct. Locked On West Virginia. Absolutely. But I want to bring this, get on here and talk about what this means. Let me put you in the shoes a minute. If you're a aspiring quarterback that might be looking at West Virginia, you have somebody like Pat White walk in your living room, right? He shows you the 4 bowl rings he's won, talks about how he did it playing for Rich Rodriguez, right? The same guy that you're going to be playing for. He's going to know what it takes to run that offense. He's going to know what it takes to play the quarterback position in that offense better than anybody. He did it for 3 years. His last year obviously was under Bill Stewart and a different OC, but he ran that offense for 3, really 4, you could say, because he spent a redshirt year there as well. So he was in that offense for 4 years, learning it, studying it, mastering it. So I just think it's great to have him. I don't know if he'll be on the road recruiting or not, but if he is one of those 10 coaches, I think it's great. And even if he's not, when players come to campus, they've got Pat White sitting there they can talk to. I think it's awesome. The very first quarterback to ever win 4 straight bowl games, he can talk about that. He can talk about the Georgia Sugar Bowl. All these things he can bring to the table. Talk about, again, look at the connections he's built throughout his career. In the NFL, are you serious? What a great pipeline of network, what a great network and pipeline of resources that is to have that NFL pedigree and all those coaches he worked with at that level, all the coaches he's worked with in college over the years at the HBCUs he worked at and other schools he worked at. He's built a great network around him. His days playing in the NFL. So I don't think there's anything negative to say about this hire, in my opinion. I don't see how there's any negativity at all. Now, I think the biggest controversy is most people think he should be the quarterback coach. But again, I don't want to get hung up on titles here. Remember, he is also assistant to the head coach. So he may be second or third in charge on that side of the ball, depending on where Travis Trickett falls in the equation. You're going to have Rich Rod, you're going to have Travis Trickett, you're going to have Pat White, and you're going to have the position coaches. That's the way I see it. Or you might have Rich Rod, Pat White, then Travis Trickett. I don't know. But nonetheless, by being assistant to the head coach, it looks like he's going to be fairly high up the totem pole here outside of just being assistant quarterback coach. I think there's going to be more to his story, more to his role, rather, than just coaching quarterbacks here. And I welcome that. I think it's a great move by Coach Rod to bring him on. I want to give a shout-out real quick to those of you who have joined the chat. Raven Grady, WVU Fan 13, Locked On West Virginia, the Friday KC Jack State. Thank you. One of the best Jack State accounts out there. Go check them out on X. We have Riley in the house, and we have Curtis D316. We have Pokemon Kid Entertainment, Stanley Metch Jr., J Bob, and Bama 25. Thank you all for joining the show. Real quick, before we move on to this next segment, where we talk about Title IX and why I think it's so important, not only college football and college sports, but to West Virginia, and not only Title IX, but the Department of Education rescinded their previous plan to apply Title IX to the revenue sharing money. But before we get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to my other sponsor, our good friends over at BetUS. You've all heard me talk about BetUS's online casino, online sports betting. They also have an online casino. You can go to betus.com/casino, and on your very first deposit, you can get up to a 200% sign-on bonus. Again, first deposit, you get a 200% sign-on bonus over at betus.com/casino. Make sure you take advantage of that offer today. You get that bonus up to a $2,000 deposit. So if you're looking for a brand new online casino, look no further than our good friends over at betus.com/casino. Please make sure, though, if you do gamble, please do so responsibly. Okay? All right. Now, Let's jump back over to the topic at hand, and let's talk about the story today that came out from Ross Dellinger over at Yahoo Sports. It says the Department of Education, as expected, has officially rescinded the NIL-related Title IX guidance that would have put dozens of schools' rev share plans in violation. And here's a link to the announcement. It says, the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights today announced it has rescinded the 9-page Title IX guidance on name, image, and likeness issued in the final days of the Biden administration. The NIL guidance, rammed through by the Biden administration in its final days, is overly burdensome, profoundly unfair, and it goes well beyond what agency guidance is intended to achieve. Without a credible legal justification, the Biden administration claimed the NIL agreements between schools and student athletes are akin to financial aid and must therefore be proportionally distributed between male and female athletes under Title IX. Enacted over 50 years ago, Title IX says nothing about how revenue-generating athletics programs should allocate compensation among student athletes. The claim that Title IX forces schools and colleges to distribute student-athlete revenues proportionally based on gender equity considerations is sweeping and would require clear legal authority to support it. That does not exist. Accordingly, the Biden NIL guidance is rescinded, said Acting Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights Craig Trainer. So, as expected, the Department of Education is not going to try to force these colleges and universities to distribute their revenue sharing money equally between male and female athletes. And I'm going to talk about why I think that's positive. I think it's kind of simple, right? If you have to do that, that means you're going to have to pay half of your rev share money, half of that $20.5 million that these athletic departments are going to have to pay. You would have to pay half of that to your gymnastics athletes, to your track athletes, to your rifle athletes, to your tennis athletes, whatever the sport is. You'd have to give those athletes, those female athletes, half of the money. And they're participating in sports that are actually losing money. All college sports are basically ran off the money made in football and men's basketball. So therefore, those are the sports that we're going to get the majority of the revenue sharing money. And apparently now still will. That makes sense, right? It doesn't mean the female athletes don't get anything. They are going to still get a small percentage. They're still going to get a lot more than they were going to get before. They're still going to get a portion of the revenue sharing money, but it's not going to be split 50-50. If you have to split this money 50-50, let's look at the Big 12, for example. Okay. The Big 12, most of their teams carry around 10 to 15 or 10 to 12 women's sports and probably anywhere from 5 to 10 male sports, somewhere in that neighborhood, right? Let's look at West Virginia specifically. They carry 10 women's sports and 6 men's sports. I think the minimum in the Big 12 is supposed to be 6. I did see there are a couple teams, a couple schools who only have 5 men's sports. Maybe they're going to plan on adding sports later. But right now, I think the minimum is 8 women's, 6 men's that you have to carry. West Virginia's doing 10 women's and 6 men's, right? If you have to split that revenue, let's just say West Virginia has to take half their rev share money. Let's just say they have to take $10 million of those dollars and give them to the athletes in sports, in the women's sports that aren't bringing in revenue, like gymnastics, volleyball, swimming and diving, track and field, whatever. That's less money that gets to go towards football and men's basketball. It's great for those athletes, potentially, right? On the surface, it sounds, yes, that's great. Share the wealth. Make sure they get their share. But how is that feasible when majority of your revenue is made in football and men's basketball, but you have to send your allocations over to another part of the program that's actually losing you money? How is that sound fun? How does that sound make sense? Make sound sense financially? It doesn't. You can't run a business that way. You can't run your home budget that way. You can't allocate your resources to the stuff that's costing you money. Football's bringing in the revenue, so that's where you have to put most of your resources so that you increase that revenue even more. And guess what? Then you take if you can increase revenue more, you spend more in football. Hopefully you make more in football, right? Then you take that and you put a percentage of that and send it over to those female athletes. That's what you got to do here. And I know some people don't like the idea of, quote, trickle down economics, but I think in college athletics, that's the only way to make it work. Because if you have to allocate money to these other programs and you can't put it towards football, you're not going to be competitive in football, which means you're going to lose games, which means you're probably going to lose even more. You're going to make even less money in football, which is less money you have to give to your other programs down the line. And eventually you may not even have enough money to participate fully in the revenue sharing that you're participating in. You have less money to go around at the end of the day. So what's that lead to? Well, maybe at some point they end up having to cut sports. Do you want West Virginia's other schools to have to cut sports? Those are less scholarships you can give out to these to future athletes. It hurts enrollment at your university, which costs your university money. It's just a snowball effect that affects the entire university. If you have to cut out these scholarships in these sports, and you can't cut women's sports, it would actually hurt men's sports more, in my opinion. Title IX likely wouldn't allow you to cut any more women's sports, because if, let's say, you try to cut the volleyball team out. If you try to cut the volleyball team out, well, all of a sudden now, because of the amount of scholarships that football carries, 105, well, now all of a sudden your scholarship allocations are tilted more towards men. So you can't cut that women's sport. You got to leave the women's sport in. So, okay, I've got to cut somewhere. So let's go cut a men's sport out. Let's go cut wrestling out. Or let's go cut, I don't know, name a men's sport, baseball, whatever. They'll start having to cut men's sports out, potentially. How is it helping the entire athletic department as a whole if you have to start cutting out full programs, sports completely out from what you offer as a university? That's not helping anybody. Again, you're hurting the university as a whole by offering less scholarships, making your university less attractive to potential student athletes in the future, hurting enrollment. It's a trickle effect that hurts everybody. So to me, it makes zero sense. Now, I expect I saw some congressperson or senator come out and say, I don't remember her name, say that she thought this was bad for student athletes and bad for girls and yada, yada. It ain't going to be bad if they can't listen. There are going to be some programs. Let's take West Virginia out. Let's say you got a program that is carrying more than the minimum amount of women's sports. Maybe they do cut women's sports. How is it helping these girls out if they don't have that sport to play down the road? If the university can't afford to carry the sport their girls in, so they just cut it completely out, then how is it helping them in the long run? I would rather them get a cut of the share, keep the sport intact, get that scholarship, be able to go to school for free, make a little bit of rev share money, than to make nothing. Well, I just don't understand the backwards thinking by some people and I shouldn't say backwards, but to me, it just doesn't make sense to feel like the rev share money should be split 50-50. Am I missing something here? I'm not trying to look, I got $3. So by no means am I trying to be sexist at all. I just think you have to do what makes sense. Football and men's basketball are making the revenue. That's where most of the money needs to go back to. Common sense. They're carrying the entire athletic department on their backs. Right? WVU Fan 13, that's a very fair statement. He says he thinks it should be up to WVU Athletics to decide. That's fair. And I think it is up to the athletics department to decide, but I don't think any athletics department that I know of is going to split it 50-50. WVU Fan 13 also says winning cures all. WVU football and basketball has to start producing W's. Very well said. Riley with a comment says, it's not helping any of the athletic program. It's just literally making people lose their scholarships and making it more unfair. Bingo. Stanley Mesh Jr. says, glad it was ruled as expected. Now it's time to regulate the NIL and transfer portal. Getting this Wild West landscape equaled out some. Now, there is going to be there was news released on this today too, but it was just too much to try to fit into one show, and it was too much to try to decipher. There was some news that came out today about the NIL piece. There's going to be with this. Let's just go ahead. Matter of fact, Ross touched on this. Let's just go ahead and pull it up. I'll be able to explain it to you better if I can just pull it up on the screen and we can look at it together. Ross Dellinger also put this out about the NIL piece to this rev share plan. Let me find it here. Bear with me a second. All right, here we go. It says, the NCAA today sent a memo to D1 schools providing them with instructions on opting into the house settlement rev share concept. Deadline to opt in is March 1. Now, we all know Ren Baker has already decided West Virginia's in, right? It says those named defendants, the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big 12, and Pac 12, are, quote, assumed to be opting into the settlement. And it lays out everything here that they need to know about how it's going to be implemented. And one of the things it talks about, there's going to be an enforcement arm. Here it is. It says, the proposed settlement, if approved, permits the designation of an enforcement entity to enforce rules prohibiting third-party pay-for-play, eliminates circumvention of the 22% cap, and to ensure the new NIL model achieves its objectives. Framework development for the new enforcement structure is well underway, with emphasis on creating efficient investigative procedures, timely decision-making, and appropriate penalties. Key protocols have been established for case management and decision-making processes, and collaboration with relevant stakeholders continues to strengthen the oversight model. An executive search firm has been engaged to assist in filling the top positions in the new entity. More details will be provided before the new enforcement entity begins its work. And Dennis Dodd over at CBS Sports wrote a great piece about they're looking to hire a CEO/commissioner type person to oversee all of this. Now, Stanley, to your comment, the transfer portal is not necessarily mentioned here. I think the NCAA is going to continue to oversee that piece of it. This is going to strictly be based on NIL, the roster management piece, the revenue sharing cap. It's going to be based on all the financial stuff, so to speak, that's going to be involved with this house settlement. There's going to be an enforcement entity here that's separate, supposedly separate from the schools and from the NCAA. And I think that's a great idea. Hopefully they can find somebody that has as few ties to any school as possible or any conference as possible. Everybody, all these people that are going to be candidates have went to school somewhere, right? So that's totally not completely possible. But if you can get somebody outside of the, you don't want it to be Greg Sankey or Brett Yormark or anybody like that. You want it to be somebody that's outside of the conference structure, hopefully. Maybe somebody like a Nick Saban. Maybe Oliver Luck's name was brought up, but I don't think he's interested. There are people, Condoleezza Rice's name has been brought up. Somebody that's outside of today's sports as far as internally involved in it, right? I think that's somebody that they'll find to do that. So there is going to be some enforcement around these rules. It's not just going to be willy-nilly. And I think I think this house settlement, I know some people don't think it's a good idea. I do. I think it's going to bring at least some form of fairness to a degree around NIL. Now, they're going to be able to do outside NIL deals outside of just the rev sharing, but it's going to be this arm is going to be there's going to be a clearinghouse that has to approve the deals if they're at a certain level. They're going to try to keep everything more fair, right? They're going to try to set a market value with the help of third-party firms and all this to try to rein all this stuff in, man. Rein in all the tampering. We're going to try to rein in all the abuse of the system, so to speak, and try to level the playing field as much as possible. Now, with the TV revenue deals that are out there today, it's going to be hard to do that, at least, completely. But at least you can make it somewhat more competitive by having these rev share, this infrastructure, I'll call it, around the new house settlement model. I think it's going to be critically important for college football, college sports as a whole, to have that enforcement arm there to control this thing. Here's a little bit of another post that Ross made. Ross Dellinger did a great job with this today, laying everything out. He says, for the NCAA, how the projected $20.5 million annual rev share cap is calculated, it's 22% of certain athletic department rev categories, which we already knew. But we highlighted an important part. Donations tied to season tickets are not part of the calculation. It says the pool cap, the maximum dollar value of additional payments and or benefits a school may provide to its student athletes during an academic year. The pool cap will be calculated and released annually. It'll be calculated by totaling 8 of the membership financial reporting system reports revenue categories for each school from the 5 defendant conferences in Notre Dame, then dividing the total by the number of schools from the defendant conferences plus Notre Dame, then taking 22% of the resulting dollar figure. Wow, that's a mouthful. Holy cow. Anyway, maybe you got that, maybe you didn't. I didn't. But anyway, I kind of understand the gist of it. But then over on the right, it says the MFRS, or Membership Financial Reporting System reports revenue categories include ticket sales, but does not include donations tied to season tickets. So, for example, if you're a season ticket holder for West Virginia or any other school, in order to buy season tickets, you normally have to make a donation to the athletic department, right, before you're even eligible to buy those season tickets. And what level of season tickets you can buy is based on what level of contribution you make. Well, apparently, those donations aren't going to count against that financial reporting number. So if a school wants to get more money in that they don't have to count against that cap, they just increase the donation level that is required to buy season tickets. Now, you obviously don't want to increase it too much or you won't sell any season tickets. You have to find that happy medium where people will still buy their season tickets and will still make those donations, right? That's the fine line you got to find, and that's the job of Ren Baker and his staff at West Virginia to try to find that number. What's that point of no return? It says input revenue from participation in away games will be included. Media rights revenues are included. NCAA distributions and grants are included. Non-media conference distributions are included. That means like your NCAA tournament money, for example. The direct revenues from participation in football bowl games, conference distribution of football bowl revenues, and athletics department revenues from sponsorships, royalties, licensing agreements, and advertisements. So all of that money is going to be part of that calculation to determine the rev share number. And that number is going to go up a little bit every single season by about 4%, they say. So that just gives us a snapshot of when you talk about the numbers that are used to calculate, how do they get the rev share number? These are all the numbers they look at to calculate to reach their final number of what they're now saying is 22% of overall revenue. And see if there's any other new information here in this. It applies to all Division I schools. It says if your school is going to opt in, it tells you the next steps. And if they're not opting in, what your steps are. Basically, if you're not opting in, you basically fall under the current model today. You have to stay at the 80 for football, for example, you have to stay at the 85 scholarship limit. Whereas if you opt into house, you actually can maximize the scholarship limit up to the roster limit of 105. So those are just a couple quick examples of where it's going to differ between schools who don't opt in and those who do. At the end of the day, though, if you want to compete at the highest level, you better opt in at least close to the maximum amount, or as close as you can get. Because if you don't, they're going to use it against you in recruiting. For one thing, they're going to say, hey, this school over here is not opting into the housing settlement. They're not going to pay out as much rev share money. You may want to think about not going over there. You won't make as much money over there. So that's, if you want to compete, you better opt in. And from everything we're hearing and reading, West Virginia does intend to opt in very close to the max number. So I think that's a good thing. As a West Virginia fan, I'm excited about that. Anyway, there are lawsuits being filed all over the place about eligibility, JUCO eligibility, and things like that. Here, Senator Ted Cruz has chimed in about this Title IX thing. He says, as I predicted, the Biden administration's last-ditch effort to impose their policy objectives on collegiate athletics would not last long. I remain committed to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on a path forward that will ensure all athletes are able to earn compensation for their name, image, and likeness. Government intervention and mandates kill opportunities for athletes, especially in women's and Olympic sports, what I just talked about a minute ago. I am glad President Trump and his administration have righted this wrong. And look, and I'm not trying to get onto a political debate here. I'm just trying to keep this around the sports and how it's affecting our college sports. And this is important. It's very important. I do expect there will probably be some athletes or former athletes or whatever that will file lawsuits here. about this, saying the Title IX should apply, but we'll have to wait and see it play out in the courts as to whether that holds any water or not. We got Sam Ventura in the house, who's a paid VIP member here at Couz's Corner. Thank you, Sam, for chiming in. We have Timothy Green also in the house. He says, great show, Couz. Thank you, Timothy. I appreciate you chiming in. Joey Foster's in the house. Says, howdy, everyone. I hope all of you are well. Smash the like button, and let's go Mountaineers. Yeah, great reminder, Joey. Please, guys, if you don't mind, hit the guys and gals, I should say, please hit that thumbs up button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm. If you're watching this, all you have to do is click the X button on your device, close out the live chat. It doesn't take me off the screen or close me out. It just closes the live chat box. You hit that thumbs up button, and all you have to do is go back and click the live chat box again. It pulls it right back up again. So, and if you're watching this on the replay, please be sure to hit the thumbs up. It really helps the algorithm for me and will help my channel grow. See who else we got. WV Fan 13 still here, says it should be ran like NFL salary cap situation. I agree. And they're getting closer and closer to that, and that's, by hiring a commissioner, for example, or a CEO to run this thing. You're getting similar to what the NFL has with their commissioner, right? They're getting closer and closer as we speak to having that CEO. And then we're also getting closer and closer to having the Power Four conferences run this thing. The Power Four conferences are lobbying for more and more authority over this thing. And at the end of the day, they are the defendants in this House lawsuit, in most of these lawsuits that are out there right now, actually. So they feel like they should have more say in, since they're the ones who were named the defendants, they feel like they should have more say in how the thing's governed and how it's ran. And I do understand that, but at the same time, your G5 schools and your lower level schools, they have a dog in the fight too. They're being held to some of these same standards and these same rules, but yet they're not getting any say in what happens. So I do sort of feel bad for those smaller schools and those smaller programs, because I feel like they kind of are getting forced. They're having things forced on them that they really, most of them haven't even participated in NIL anyway, because they couldn't afford it. Talking about like your FCS schools and your D2 schools and D3 schools, they haven't participated in much in NIL, but yet they're going to be forced to abide by some of these same rules. It's kind of unfair, right? But also, let's look at the other side of that coin, though. It's the Division I schools who basically funnel money down to them to help them pay for their sports. So I kind of see both sides of the argument there. NFL has a rookie salary cap. Why can't college? Curtis D316. That's a great question. Joey says, why don't you take my wrench and give it to someone who was always in the chat? I would recommend Timothy. Timothy actually already has one, Joey, I believe. Or maybe he doesn't. I thought he did. Timothy Green, I will give you a wrench, my man, if you want to be a channel moderator. I thought you already had one. I apologize. Al Walker's in the house, one of my newest paid VIP members here at Couz's Corner. He says, seeing some posts that perhaps the judge might not sign off on this agreement. Another collective group of athletes don't like the agreement. Yeah, there are going to be athletes who don't like the agreement, but so far from everything I've read, the majority of them are on board with it. And I don't think, schools have already started making moves to prepare for this House settlement. They've already been shuffling staff members around. Some of them have been bringing their NIL in-house, NIL collectives in-house, and they've done all these moves preemptively with the assumption that this is going to pass. So somebody knows something. I don't think you'd have all these schools doing all this if they didn't think it was going to pass. Now, it's possible it doesn't pass. It may not get ratified. You're correct, Al. But I just feel confident that it will. It appears that there are enough athletes out there who are in support of it that it should hopefully pass. That's just my take. But again, until they sign the paper and ratify it, you never know. WV Fan 13 says, if there was a rookie base salary like NFL on a 70-member roster, $30,000 base salary is $2.1 million. The contracts can be negotiated on need and experience. Wyatt Milam was paid $925,000 last year. TJ Jackson $647,000. Nick Malone $586,000. Good. I didn't know those numbers. What WV Fan 13, but they make sense. And based on experience and based on level of play, those numbers are probably pretty accurate as far as where they should be, to be honest with you. Tosh Miller thinks Pat will help for recruiting. I totally agree. Al Walker says, don't know if you saw this, Couz. A judge ruled the NCAA rules for JUCO athletes for Division I schools are restrictive, and those rules got thrown out. I did see that, but a new lawsuit was filed today by a baseball player. So I don't know if those rules didn't apply to all sports or something, but for whatever reason, this baseball player today felt the need to come out with another lawsuit, arguing the same argument that his JUCO eligibility should not cause him to not be eligible at the FBS level. But we'll see. I'm not sure what's going to come of it. And again, not sure why there was a need for another lawsuit, but I guess the more lawsuits you have, the more likely it is that these rules actually get ratified and actually get put into place. Timothy, I will definitely make you a moderator, my man. I'll do that as soon as I can, okay? Joey Foster says, I will not take sides on this argument. I was not a college athlete unless drinking games count, but I can see both sides. Thank you, Joey, for chiming in. Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it as well. I do think the college athletes deserve to be paid for absolutely. I think they basically work a full-time job and have to go to school. They have to get up at 5, 6 a.m. and work out. Then they have to go to class. Then they have to do homework. Then they have to practice. They're working a full-time job, folks. And yes, they're getting a free scholarship. And I'm not trying to throw out the value of a scholarship, but in today's world, everything has changed and evolved to where I don't think 20, 30, 40 years ago, these players were putting in the same amount of work that they're having to put in today. The pressure has increased. Therefore, the expectations have increased. Therefore, the workload has increased. And with increased workload comes increased payload or pay, right? And the players are getting more of the pie. And all these millions of dollars that are being brought in, we're not going sitting in the bleachers paying $80, $90, $100 a ticket to go watch a coach up and down the sidelines. We're going to watch the players play. That's what we're going there for, right? So they need to, and they're the ones out here lifting the weights, running up and down Law School Hill multiple times a day, doing all these workouts and putting their bodies on, taking these hard hits, getting injured, having to get surgeries and all these other things. They're not going through all of that. I mean, they are the ones going through all that. So I think they deserve something for it. And if the market dictates, look, did I love it? That when I first heard college athletes were going to be making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, I didn't love it because I'm kind of an old school guy. But I also don't hate it because I want to watch my sports. And if it means these players continue to play and put in the effort that they need to give to make it a good product, then I'm okay with it. I just want it to be fair across the board. I want it to be well managed. There needs to be guardrails in place, and this House settlement, theoretically anyway, if it gets ratified, should do all of that, at least to some degree. It's better than what we have today, right? Today, we basically have nothing. At least this gives us something. That's why I'm all for this House settlement. Big Dan T in the house, who's also a VIP member. He says, I think it's gone too far. Pay them, sure, but my God, some are making millions, in my opinion. It's made it professional, and I don't care for that. Yeah, it's definitely gone too far, Big Dan. I don't disagree with that. A college quarterback shouldn't be making $8 million a year or whatever these kind of crazy numbers are. I don't agree with that. Hopefully, the House settlement, what it will do, hopefully, is get it to where the guys, they might only make a couple million, even though that's a lot. Now, they will be able to do outside NIL deals, but if they get over $600, they're going to have to be approved through a clearinghouse. So it's going to be kind of a process to get those approved, right? So you may see less of those deals out there. I'll be interested to see if we do see less NIL deals or not once House actually gets ratified, if it does, or if things kind of stay status quo as where they are today. Riley says, I don't believe they should overpay them because, in my opinion, I think that's a little bit absurd. Timothy Green says, if the college athletes play their cards right and spend their money right, they can get a big jump ahead in life if they're smart with their money. Absolutely, Timothy. And I think it's important for these college programs to educate these student athletes to the best of their ability on money management. Neil Brown was trying to do that. I expect Coach Rod will do the same thing. I expect he will keep some of that infrastructure in place. And look, I talked about this in my show about Rhett Rodriguez. He has a banking background. Yes, he's a quarterback coach. Yes, he's a football coach. But he also has that banking background where he's going to be able to hopefully help some of these young student athletes talk about life after football, talk about life after college, how to manage their NIL money, how to manage their future NFL money if they're lucky enough to get there or fortunate enough to earn or if they earn that spot. I shouldn't say lucky. If they earn a spot in the NFL. If all that happens, he'll be able to help them answer some of those questions because of his background in finance. So Rhett Rodriguez, to me, is more than just a quarterback coach. If you take into consideration what he's done throughout his young life and his experiences. Riley says, do you think they should be making millions of dollars? What reasonable range do you think they should be making? Riley, I don't know. It's hard for me to, I'd say, I think it depends. I mean, a college quarterback is probably worth six figures, I would think. Let's face it. I mean, that's the most popular player, right? I mean, and that's six figures is a lot of money to the average American. It's a lot of money to me. So I get it. A lot of people may not like that, but let's just look at, I mean, the demand is there for college quarterbacks, right? That's the player everybody wants to write about. It's the player people like me want to talk about. It's the player that businesses want to do endorsement deals with. It's who all the kids want an autograph from. It's the jerseys they want to buy. That's who gets the attention. So yeah, I think six figures is okay. I don't like it once it gets up, into the high six figures and millions. I think that's probably too much for a college athlete, but especially when you add in the fact they're also getting a scholarship on top of that. But if the fair market value says that's what it's going to take to compete, then I guess you got to do what you got to do, right, to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. But yeah, I don't love it. Most people, like, I would have played college football, and there are people watching this show right now who probably played college football because they loved it and because they were getting a scholarship. And some play with. There are walk-ons who play it without even getting a scholarship, folks. There are walk-ons who are not even getting paid to play, and they go through the workouts and the rigors of it for nothing, right? Other than being part of the team, maybe the meal plans and some of those perks. But my point being, there are people who do it for nothing, basically. So just because they want to do it, they love it so much. But, we do live in America where we reward hard work. You reward people who perform at a higher level are supposed to be rewarded more than those who don't. That's capitalism, and I know college sports is not supposed to be capitalism, but as far as reward structures and systems and all that, I guess you have to somehow model it like that, or you get sued. At the end of let's face it, that's what's driving all this. The NCAA for so long was so greedy that they finally got sued over it, and now they're losing everything, losing all these lawsuits. So in order to keep it out of the courtrooms, they've got to do something. And you've got to be fair about it, and you've got to be legal about it. And if the market says a guy is worth $500,000, then I guess you got to pay him $500,000, right? I don't know. It just is what I've just kind of accepted at this point, and it is what it is. I don't want to be old man yelling at clouds, I just say it is what it is. Let's roll with it. Tosh Miller says one problem NIL currently is there's no transparency with how much players are making. If it was out in the open, teams would be able to easily see how much the market is paying per position. Yeah. And maybe I don't know if that's going to be part of this or not. Maybe there will be some more transparency to it. But since the money is going to be coming from the school now, which is a public in some cases are public institutions, maybe it will be more public. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that works. Jose says communists trying to cap NIL. Yeah, I don't think the outside NIL deals that they do, I don't think those should be capped. I just don't see how you can legally do that because that is outside of the university paying them. You know what I'm saying? So Joe, I totally agree with you. I don't see how you can cap somebody's value. If I can go out here and get somebody to pay me to be a spokesperson for them, which they won't, by the way. By the way, if anybody needs a spokesperson, you want to pay me to do it, I'll gladly talk to you. But anyway, if somebody want to pay me to go in here and be a spokesperson, I'm going to make as much money as they're willing to pay me, right? That's only fair. It's that way with any job. You're worth what they're willing to pay you. And you shouldn't try to restrict what somebody can make. That's just not the American way, in my opinion. But I know some people may disagree. But I do like the idea of the school, what the school pays them being capped, because that's public money right there. To me, that's a little different. Or at least some of it's public money, not all of it. Riley, I have no idea how much a spokesperson should get paid. It depends on what they're speaking for and on and all of that. I mean, there are levels to that. There's not really one set number. But that's a great question. WV Fan 13 says Shedeur Sanders was paid $5.1 million last year. Majority endorsements. Yes, that's what I think I saw that number floating around somewhere. Timothy Green says, I'm a retired coal miner. Right. I never made near that much money in my entire life. Yeah, Timothy, it sucks, man, but that's the world we live in. Celebrities, people that are famous, people that are good at a sport are going to get paid a heck of a lot more money than folks like yourself who slaved away in a coal mine. Unfortunately, we're probably working even harder than they do. You know, it sucks. But also where I'm a capitalist, you know, as a person who's a capitalist, I can't be too mad about it because it's people like me and you who are fans who are driving the market up on these numbers. You know, we're the ones driving it. It's the public that's driving the number up, not really the player. You can't blame the players for it. They're just taking what's given to them. Somebody offered me $5 million. I'm not turning it down, you know? So don't hate the player, hate the game. That's one of those situations, right? Al Walker says, should athletes be hired as employees of schools? You know, Al, I don't know I've thought a lot about that, and that's a great question. And my opinion is yes. But see, here's just on the surface. Now, I don't know what, as someone who's never owned a company that hires people and fires people and those types of things, I don't know what all it entails outside of just paying them a salary. But I think at the end of the day, it may come down to that being the only way you can get the student athletes and the schools and conferences to all agree and be on the same page is by forcing them to sign contracts with each other and have collective bargaining. And how do you can't have collective bargaining? It's going to be hard to have collective bargaining if they're not employees, right? So to me, I think at some point you're going to have to get to that model for this whole thing to work. I'm not a fan of it because I think by, you know, we've already taken the amateurism part of it out and kind of kicked it to the curb. But if you do that, then it's definitely gone at that point. But I don't know that. I think that's the best way to get guardrails around everything is you have both parties sign a contract with each other that ties them together, just like the NFL does, right? That's about the best way to do it, in my opinion. And I think the best way to do that is to be employees. WV Fan 13's exactly right. Jordan made most of his money off endorsement deals. You're exactly right. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate everybody hopping on. I want to give another quick shout out to my sponsors, BetUS Online and Katz, Kenner, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law. Thank them for helping me keep the lights on. Reminder to you to please hit the thumbs up button on this video if you're watching it live or on the replay. Also, please please drop a comment. Also, please share it with your family and friends who like West Virginia sports. Also, don't forget I have Hoops from the Hills. It's a West Virginia basketball channel. I've been covering the team all season long. We're going to continue to cover them up through the end of the season. And hopefully, if they make it into March Madness, continue to cover the team. So come over and check me out over at Hoops from the Hills, right? Also want to give a quick shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode. If you want to be a paid VIP member like Al Walker here, who's got the badge there beside his name, or WV Fan 13, Timothy Green, some of these others, you can do that by hitting the join button below or the join button in the description box or over at the homepage of my channel. But the VIP member shout outs of this episode are Deb K, James Green, T Jinx 048, Cardinal, Ken Roberts, WVU 8 Ear, Robert Brown, and Gamecock Chuck. Thank you all for the support of the channel. I really appreciate it. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Hope the rest of your day is top shelf. Hope your day is blessed. And Q Country Roads.